Talking now to Aurelia, who's going to be talking about the trends with economic migrants coming into South Africa.
Thanks, Nazi. It's a fascinating economy, it really is, and so distorted for so long by politics and the relationship with South Africa. We welcome Aurelia Segatti, who's the labour migration expert from the International Labour Organization. Aurelia, thanks for coming in. That economic migration aspect, there was gratitude from Robert Mugabe to South Africa for receiving all the migrants. What is the scale, actually, of this migration? Someone estimated 6 million Zimbabweans could be in South Africa?
I think we have to be very careful with those figures. There's plenty of figures floating around. Let's remember that the population of Zimbabwe as a whole is 14 million.
That's right.
So if we had 6 million of them in South Africa, I think we would see the impact on Zimbabwe itself. More reasonably, I think we have some figures, not a lot, not very good statistics, but we do have some in South Africa coming from the South African Labour Force Survey. They go back to 2012, but still it's an indication. And at the time, there was an estimate of about 500,000 Zimbabwean workers, migrant workers in the country, which is a very interesting indication because they are the largest group of foreign migrant workers in South Africa, with a very high rate of employment among them in the range of 61%.
The sectors, Aurelia, where we're seeing the greatest impact of economic migrants into South Africa, where are they being absorbed and where is their skill and capacity being felt?
Well, what we see with Zimbabwean migration is an absorption of those workers at the two ends of the South African labour market. The majority of them are absorbed at the lower end, agriculture, construction, security, the hospitality industry. But also many very highly skilled Zimbabweans in finance, in teaching, in the professions, in the medical sector, for instance. So these are the characteristics, the features of Zimbabwean migration to South Africa.
Joseph, your perceptions of this contribution to our economy?
Well, certainly, I think there is a contribution from a skill set point of view. They bring a different dimension in terms of what they have learned in Zimbabwe, given the challenges Zimbabwe have gone through. But also, there's a little bit of pressure, obviously, in the South African economy, in particular from social service delivery point of view, given the fact that some of them in particular, the ones who do not have employment, they have to find hospitals, they have to find schools.
Is there a special relationship, Aurelia, in the sense that the Zimbabweans have de facto privileges and access that perhaps people from other African countries don't? I mean, we know that there are lots of Somalis, for example, Nigerians in Cape Town. I came across a medical doctor working as a car guard in Cape Town. That was the only way he could make a living. Is it easier for Zimbabweans, or is it open season for anyone who wants to come here?
Well, obviously, the fact that Zimbabweans come from the country next door, have some commonalities with South Africans, share the same languages for some of them, makes it easier for them to integrate into South African society. They have an added advantage, that's very clear. They are also perceived differently by South Africans, and perhaps South Africans are more familiar with Zimbabweans because they have been around for a longer time and there is a shared history. And of course
there's the language which is quite similar, Shona being similar to the Nguni languages. Now the other point that that Joseph raised that I just want to hit back at you, Aurelia, is that he spoke about pressure on public service delivery. But on the other side of the coin, there's a very real quantifiable contribution to the economy. Do we know what that contribution is? Do we know how much Zimbabweans contribute to the growth of the South African economy? I suppose
another way of asking it is, are they giving more than they're getting?
Absolutely.
Well, it's a very difficult question wherever you look at it and whichever group of migrants you consider, because the factors in the equations are so many. To calculate the actual economic impact of any group of migrants, you have to take into account what they bring into society, what they contribute in terms of income taxes, in terms of VAT, etc., and what they cost to society, what state services spend on them, that they wouldn't spend otherwise. So it's an extremely difficult calculation, and I don't think anyone has the figures. What is interesting, though, about Zimbabwean migrants is that if you compare them with other groups of migrant workers in South Africa, they have a very, very high rate of participation in the labour market. In other words, they come with fewer dependents than other groups of migrants. And I think that's a very interesting feature of Zimbabwean migration to South Africa.
I suppose also easier to go back to their dependents in a country which is next door than to go back to Nigeria or Somalia. We'll have to end the conversation there. Unfortunately, thanks very much to Aurelia Segatti from the ILO.